Hello and welcome to the Interpreting Wine, Drinks and Hospitality podcast. I'm of course your host and podcast founder, Lawrence Francis. Across 8 episodes welcoming you to the Austrian wine producing region of Wagram. While I've covered several Austrian producers on the podcast, this is the first series featuring a deep dive of a single region with all the episodes recorded with producers in Wagram in September 2019. In their own words, they'll introduce you to the geology, the history, the local grape varieties, winemaking styles, and of course, wines of the region. All of the producers are at least organic and some are biodynamic. And interestingly, many of these wines are not yet available in major overseas markets. And where producers are seeking representation, I've included details in each episode. So without further ado, here's today's episode of this Wagram special. Today's episode of the Wagram series features Toni Soellner of Bioweingut Soellner. In a rare treat, Toni rarely travelling outside of Austria to wine fairs, he tells us his origin story and talks Veltliner and biodynamics. Before leading a tasting of 9 of their wines, a selection of Gruner Veltliner, Veltliner and Riesling. Enjoy!
I'm Toni Soellner from the winery Soellner in the small village Gosing am Wagram in the Wagram region in Austria. Our winery is small and we work biodynamic since we started organic 1994 and then we switched to work biodynamic 2004. Now we cultivate 16 hectares of vineyards. The main part Gruner Veltliner, it's the main variety of Austria. A small part of Veltliner, it's our variety from our heart. It was my first wine from an old vineyard, 1989. I got some vineyards from my parents. And yeah, this was the start with Veltliner. Veltliner is a very special variety, a little like Pinot Noir, it's a diva. You need a perfect soil, you need a lot of work in the vineyard and to take care in the cellar to bring the good taste into the bottle.
So we're here sitting in the tasting room, and we've literally just come from looking at one of the vineyards out there, the Veltliner vineyards, and now on the sort of the 6th producer that I visited in Wagram. It was very interesting to see the Veltliner, which, as everybody says, is quite a diva, but can be quite challenging to work with because it can be quite vigorous if it's in the loess soils, and then actually the bunches can kind of potentially rub against each other and potentially break. And it was just very interesting going to see that vineyard that we looked at and seeing, I guess, some of the decisions that were made around that particular plot, which meant that it seemed as though it was maybe a little easier or a little bit some good decisions were made around getting the bunches to a more manageable size. So could you maybe just share a little bit about that, because I think the listeners and maybe even some other farmers would be very interested to hear about some of the ways that you've gone towards getting the Veltliner to maybe behave a little bit.
Yeah, if I was young, I was very fascinated from this variety because you find red grapes in the vineyard and you will find no color in the wine. So I started 1989 to say to my father, I will make some wine. And I've done from Veltliner. I was the first in our region to do Veltliner as single wine because in the past everybody made a blend. And since then, a lot of winemakers starting or cultivating Veltliner. But Veltliner is a very, it's not easy variety. You you have to take care. And we found in a very old vineyard, I think it was around 80 years old, not 18. And we found a few wines with small grapes and not too much yield. And this we drafted and selected and brought to our first vineyard, Berg Eisenhut. Here we cultivated around 2000 until 2003 the new wines. Yeah, and this is the Berg Eisenhut is a very special place with very good soil for Rote Veltliner. It's a red gravel from the old river Danube. And around 100 years ago, Rote Veltliner only grow on such soils, not on loess, only on red gravel, because it brings more mineralic and more the wines are getting more subtle, more mineralic and more fine, more structure. I would say more complex, and from alcohol not too high. Since we work biodynamic, our wines going down with alcohol. We have not too much alcohol because the grapes have the taste not only with sugar. The harvesting is easier, maybe, I would say. We have not too much stress with too much alcohol. Yeah, this is a important reason to make biodynamic wine, not the only one, but very important. The main part is to bring liveness in the soil and liveness in the wine. I think if you work biodynamic, you can taste the liveness in the wine. We always say wine with soul. Sometimes you have a lot of alcohol, a lot of extract, but you have no harmonies and no soul in some wines. This is the reason for us, more reason to make biodynamic wine.
As I said, we're sitting here in the tasting room, which, as Toni has just mentioned to me, is in the oldest part of the house, some sort of 500 years old. We're not sure exactly what it used to be used for, but I think it makes a stunning, modern backdrop, really, to taste some of these wines. So I think, the best thing to do, really, to bring all of what you've been speaking about together is just to taste some wine. So maybe take us through a selection of the wines that you have on offer here.
We start tasting with a Petillant called Marie Petillant. It's a blend of Rote Veltliner, a little bit Riesling, Pinot Noir, and a little Muscatella. It was the first vintage, 2018, and it's I would say very mineralic, complex and harmonious Petillant. Rote Veltliner is from red gravel and Riesling is from sandy loess. So in our region, or in my winery, we have around 80% of sandy loess and a little bit red gravel for Rote Veltliner and a small part with clay and sand from the old sea side million years ago.
That Petillant I think it's right in the zone. I think it's coming in at sort of 12%. It's still got a sort of a freshness and a kind of a playfulness, I guess you would expect, but it's got that roundedness, I would say. It's got the depth. You've got the different grapes coming through. It feels like they're very much in harmony and they're all sort of expressing together. And you've got the minerality coming through, and you've got that vivacity. You've got that life and energy, and really, really good. Yeah, I think it's a great example. I mean, sometimes I think people can write off Petillants as being too simple or to kind of at times, just sort of a little bit watery even, and not having presence. Definitely has a lot of presence, and really, really good start. Now
we taste Riesling. If I was really young, I worked in another winery in the region of Wachau, and we cultivated in the Wachau Riesling. And I said to me, I will try as well to cultivate Riesling. And now we taste the result of the cultivation. It's a very flavory, fine Riesling with less alcohol. We cultivate Riesling on very sandy loess, so the growing is very slowly. It's not a typical Riesling, but it's a very flavory, fine Riesling.
For me, it's tasting very dry. You said you've got sort of 2-3 grams of residual sugar, which isn't a lot for many types of Rieslings, but it's still, I think it has that kind of presence and mouthfeel of maybe some other sort of richer Riesling. So it really seems to be filling and quite broad, and again coming in at only 12%. So, and I'm getting that lovely citrus fruits and Mediterranean fruits on the palate, but then that lovely salty sort of mineralic finish coming in at the end. So yeah, really, really good.
So the next wine is our variety of our love, Rote Veltliner. This is the first Rote Veltliner without a blend. It's a blend of different vineyards from our village. We have our vineyards around our village, and so a little bit different souls, some Sandy-Loess from old wines and red gravel from younger wines. This should be a Rote Veltliner, as a typical subtle, elegant, flavory wine with less alcohol.
Yeah, I think this is a really good example of really what you've been, reinforcing all morning to me. And you mentioned earlier just about, the getting Rote Veltliner into the right soil, because I think this definitely has. It's an elegant wine, I would say. Top level. There is, certainly, some that sort of creaminess, I guess, from some of the lees contact from fermentation through till the spring. But there's definitely there's different layers here, I guess, to kind of discovered. Again, the alcohol is quite low. You were telling me that 18 being quite a hot year here in Austria. This is maybe, and all the wines maybe from that year are sort of about around 0.5% higher in alcohol than normal. But I think it's always, I'm always in awe of when the hot years come, but you still have that elegance that comes through there. I think it's of course, wine should reflect the year, but it also should, I guess, reflect the ethos of the winemaker. So if you're already normally sitting at sort of 11 and a half, and it goes up to 12, then you still have that kind of subtlety that you would expect from your wines.
So the next wine we taste is Gruner Veltliner. Gruner Veltliner, the main variety of Austria. Not the old variety. Gruner Veltliner is a young variety. And in our winery, we have 50%, around 50% of Gruner Veltliner on Sandy-Loess, and also a small part on a special soil, how would I say, limestone with shelves. Mm-hmm. But now we taste Wogenrain Gruner Veltliner. Wogenrain means the old German word for Wagram, for our region. It should be a typical, classical, fresh and fine Gruner Veltliner for our region.
You really described that kind of spot on. I think, again, it's been interesting that I guess this is a style that represents the region as well, and this is something that people expect, I guess, every winery to have, that kind of that classic, bringing out all of the qualities that Gruner plus the Loess and the regionality can bring.
So the next wine, also Gruner Veltliner, but Gruner Veltliner from a single vineyard, from a very small single vineyard, only around 2 hectares, with shell limestone rich soil. from the old seaside with a lot of chalk. So this is also the highest mountain of our region with 371 meters by sea level. It's a mountain in the map, but it's only a hill. The interesting thing on this slope is the soil. It makes a very flavory and tropical Gruner Veltliner with very special taste from the shells and from the chalk.
It's interesting. I think the thing that stands out for me there is, as well as everything that you've just said there, is the finish. It's a, we keep saying about the year 18 being a super hot year, but there's still a lot of finesse there on the finish. It's still a fine finish, and doesn't taste like it was an overly hot year. Maybe the height of the mountain is helping with some of the freshness and some of the breezes, where keeping things a bit cooler at night.
But there is an influence. If you go, there's a lot of difference between Gruner Veltliner grapes if you cultivate on sea level of 200 meters or going up to 350, because it's cooler. Yeah. It makes sense. Climate is going hotter, and the problem is we could not go higher because it's the highest mountain. Now we taste Fumber Gruner Veltliner. It's also a single vineyard wine from vintage 2017. From Fumber we use grapes from old wines and make the fermentation and the maturing in big cask, in old cask, without influence of wood, to make the fermentation and the maturing in the big cask brings for us more complexity and more harmonious and more liveness into this wine.
This is lovely to now jump back to 17, which you've just told me was a kind of equally almost as hard as 18. A warm year, but then again keeping quite a lot of freshness, and then the casks being acacia and old acacia. You've had that micro oxygenation, just adding different layers, and just different complexity into both the mouth and the finish as well. I just think this is quite a different, and again it's kind of a step up in complexity from the straight stainless steel fermentation.
Now we taste the last Gruner Veltliner from our winery. It's also a single vineyard from a very small vineyard called Weelfel. It's a very old name. We don't know the reason for this name. This is a Gruner Veltliner. The soil is clay on the top with a lot of chalk and sandy layers from the old sea side in the ground. It gives more minerality, more flavory. It's a very untypical Gruner Veltliner, but this is the taste of this vineyard. This is also a reserve, category of reserve, so we store at least for 1 year in the ceramic, in the stoneware tanks, and it means for us a wine for storing and laying down. Now we come to our love variety, to Rote Veltliner. This is a Rote Veltliner reserve from our single vineyard called Berg Eisenhut, a very steep slope with red gravel from the old Danube, gravel and sand, and a little bit less from the last ice time. So this is a Veltliner in a very subtle, elegant form and mineralic form, and not too much alcohol. Very balanced. Now we come to our last wine. It's called Irden. Irden means earth, earthly. For this wine we use fully ripened grapes from Rote Veltliner and a few percent from other varieties. So 90% Rote Veltliner and 10% other varieties. And this wine we fermenting with skin in our stoneware tanks or ceramic with the skin for at least 1 month. So this should be an earthly wine with a very unique taste, I would say. The really last wine is vintage 2016 from Irden, because the bottling of 2017 was 2 weeks ago and it needed a little bit time. Now we opened 2016, and Irden 2016 is from the nose a little bit more open after a little bit air. And I have said it's a completely different taste to the other wines. We use for this wine less sulfur, and the fermentation with the skin brings a very different, very unique taste to the wine. How should I declare? This is a wine like red wine, I would say. It needs a little bit more temperature for drinking. Yeah, it's a wine for you love this wine or you hate this wine.
Yeah, it's. I think I love it. I got to say, I think it's really interesting, because I guess a lot of the orange wines, you can say that there's certainly an orange tinge here, but I think what can be found out there in the market is that some orange wines, if they're fermenting with already quite thick skins, then they can, in their youth, they can be particularly challenging. The tannins are there, the structure is there, and they can definitely feel quite out of balance and need that time to kind of get back into balance. But I think this is a really good example of what a more thin-skinned grape can do when it's fermented on its skins. And as you say, you've got the month there on its skins, and you've certainly got more of the color extraction. You've got more towards the sort of candied, the more sort of almost like orange rind, just that those deeper flavors and aromas coming through. But then you've also got what is I think a very palatable wine as well. And 17 and the 16, tasting very fresh, and coming through from the ceramic, pure, clean, and just I say an orange wine that makes a lot of sense, for where it's grown and what it's kind of trying to express. So really good. Thank you so much, Toni. I think this is a real treat for me, a real treat for the listeners, because as we kind of established on the way over here, in the car on the way over here, you don't, I guess, need or choose to go out to many fairs beyond the Vivinum in Vienna here. But I think it would still be very interesting just to hear a little bit about, I guess, where these wines are being sold. What are, I guess, some of the more important markets for you, and maybe a bit about what people are enjoying about these wines kind of all around the world.
How should I say? We try to make good wine, and we are happy that our wines are sailing all over the world, around the world. And we are not a lot traveling, but we try to make good wines, and we try to bring the taste of our grapes and our soul into the bottle, and to give the wines aliveness, and people should have fun with drinking of our wines, and that's it.
There we go. Cheers. Thank you so much, Toni. It was an absolute pleasure tasting with you. And I can highly recommend going out to Toni's tasting room if you happen to be in the area. I've also indicated the 4 wines that we tasted, which are available in the UK with Bibendum. And just below that, you'll find the website, Facebook handle, and email address for Bioweingut Soellner. And of course, I would love to have you following along with me on social media, where I'm at Interpreting Wine on Instagram and Facebook, at Wine Podcast on Twitter, and email hello@interpretingwine.com. Next time in the Wagram series, in episode 340, I'll be visiting Weingut Zimmer Schörny. See you then.